And I think there is a Muddy Charles event going on. So a little motivator for everybody to get in and knock it out.
The free food?
I don't know about food, but I think there's beer. All right, on the question side, homeworks, administratively, we have anything we need to talk about?
Office hours tomorrow, 4:30 to 6. The room back here. If you guys have any questions, besides what you can answer through here or the phone, just go.
And tomorrow's office hours actually start at 5.
5?
Christian just told me.
5 then.
It's usually 4:36. Tomorrow starts at 5. Just go back a bit.
All the CRE people are in systems at that point.
Systems?
Yeah, we have to get out of the beyond,
Okay, gotcha.
just so you know.
All the MSREDs, you mean?
Yeah.
Um,
That's only half the semester.
yeah, you're good. We'll work it out with you. If you need help, just grab us.
I'll know.
Okay, deal. Outside of that, homeworks are looking pretty well. You guys, we haven't really gotten into a whole lot of meat of much yet. I think today's is a little more rigorous for you. Any questions off homework, lectures, that sort of thing before we dive in? Yes, ma'am.
This is kind of detailed, but for doing the 10% annual growth for the land, is there an Excel formula you can use? Because we just did it manually.
We're gonna get into that in module 4 with a lot of details.
So you don't need to know.
You mean for the 10% of the
Yeah, like
homework?
compounded interest.
Well, that's actually the yield, but yeah, right now we're pulling it from thin air. We'll get into that.
But like, what Excel formula is that?
Do you mean how do you derive the 10%?
No.
For what's the future value?
Yeah.
How do you get the future value?
Yeah.
Basically that formula.
This one right here.
Solve for future
Future
value.
value, okay.
Yeah, that's it. And there's no, you can type in equals FV and it'll solve it. And basically put the right in. Awesome. Any other questions? And this would help us out too, because we want to make sure that we're maximizing this time for you guys. If on the form, if you want to throw a question up there that we can cover in recitation, or if there's, if depreciation, if the concept's just not quite there, we can help you work through it. We would gladly take that stuff on in recitation and help process through that as a group too. So keep that in mind. Just post up the form that we could cover in recitation. Outside of that, cap on value, cap on cost.
So grading the first homework, we saw that many of you had some type of issue with capping value and capping cost. It seems that it's not completely clear what it means, each of them. So we just figured, let's just go over the homework assignment again. I mean, the last question of that homework, the homework 3. So we had that the development cost for the Walden Woods case was $169 per square feet, and the expected value of the development was 189 square feet. Then we were told that cap on value was 9%, which is other terminology for cap on value, or cap is return on assets, especially yield and yield. Well, return on asset is kind of ambiguous, but yield actually is what they call cap on value, or just cap. And then we were told that cap on cost was 10%. Other term for that, it's yield on cost. So the question was, what's the replacement rent, gross and net replacement rents? So anyone wants to take a guess or do it? Show me how to do it. That's a formula for cap NOI, or cash flow from operations for the slowness. over total assets. So cap, which is 9%, is equal to NOI times the value, which the value, as we know, is 189. So NOI, which is the rent that we're trying to get, equals 9% times 189, right? This equals to, if you guys have calculators, but approximately $17 per square feet. Many of you use the cap rate, not the capping cost, and you actually what you capped was the development cost. So many of you were doing 9 times 169. I think you get somewhere around 5.1, and that's the most common answer I saw in the homework. So the difference, the financial difference between cap and value and cap and cost is basically that one, the cap and cost, you're basically discounting what would be your cost, the development cost, without the profits for the developer, right? So you gotta discount it with, you gotta have a higher yield to account for that profit that you're not accounting for in the development. So basically the difference between the 10 and the 9, which is 1%, would account for the profit that is not accounted in the development cost, or in other terms, this number right here. Clear? Questions? You?
Wait, so which one doesn't account for the developer's profit again?
The cap.
Cap on cost. When you're capping the development cost, it does not account for the profit. When you do the expected value, that's a total value, what you're going to expect from the project. That's accounting for the development cost, especially plus the growth, like plus the premium that you want.
So you got the cost, which is 169. This doesn't have the profit, right? Then you gotta cap this with an opportunity cost. Since you don't have the profit here, and you're trying to get to the rent, which makes your development profitable, you gotta discount it at an opportunity cost that accounts for the profit of your development, right? Because you don't have the profit here, your discount rate should account for the profit, right? So you use 10. Now, if you use the value, which is 189, this is 169 plus 20, and this is the profit. So the value, it is accounting for the profit. Then your discount opportunity cost of capital doesn't need to account for the profit because you're already accounting in this number, right? So you use 9. The difference between these two is that this one is 1% higher, is because you're accounting for the profit because the development cost doesn't have the profit. Clear?
So how do you know the extra 1% is the minimum profit that the developer needs to start the project? What if the project has 9.9% on the cost? Would you still build it?
Well, I mean, this number right here, this obviously it's a simplified example, but that number depends on the capital markets and what the investors demand under certain circumstances. It's a number that we're probably I actually don't remember if we see it how to get to in this course, but it's something that the capital market as a whole determines. It's not something, there's no rule of thumb for that. But
Market determined.
Yeah.
And so you'll see sometimes, if you look at a deal that's being put out to the market from a broker, you'll see basically details on the deal, and there'll usually be a cap rate or capitalization rate, and that is how a lot of these get done. It's a popular metric to use when you're valuing an asset. It's a multiple of the net operating income, which is what we're reviewing here, but this is the development, that would be in buying an existing asset. Does anybody have a question? Do we have like good understanding of a cap rate, capitalization rate? Some yes, some no. No? Want to come through that real
Not
quick?
necessarily, it's just like he said in classic, it's a term that means a whole bunch of different things. Like even on this slide, you have cap on value, cap on cost, where in previous ones you said when you say cap, it means this, but it doesn't always mean this. That's where I'm foggy. I think it's just kind of new and unfamiliar,
Yeah,
and it's complicated.
It's definitely, I mean,
This is the golden, I don't know, this is the main thing you need to just like, concentrate just on this thing, cap equals to NOI upon value, right? Now think about cap rate as per the risk in the project, right? Suppose if you want to buy something which is really risky, right? So what would you want? You want a higher return to compensate you for the higher risk, right? So whenever you're doing something riskier, you want higher return, so your cap rate will be always higher end, right? If something is really like non-risky, you're very bullish on something. You want to buy something and you think it's going to make you really tremendous profits. Everything is very hunky-dory. The markets are booming. What would you want? You can really settle down for a lower risk, right? So consider cap as a sort of a metric to adjust with the risk in the project. So suppose if it's a very well-located market and you're getting a very nice project, you would be willing to really cap it at 4%, 5%, or 6%. Right now, what is going on in the market is like 4 to 7% cap rates, right? So you're willing to do that. But if you're doing something like really in the suburbs and you don't know, you would cap it at like 10%, 12%, something like that. So use it as in judgment to denote risk in a project. And just like think about what is your NOI value. This is, I think, so the golden thing which is going to like be there all throughout the semester for all
that's
modules.
good. But I think to answer, like the question was, you have a lot of terms for the same thing, right? And you're kind of mixing them up. Yeah, I mean, I would say there's no shortcut for that. It takes time. I mean, but so cap on value, people usually refer to it as cap. They just say cap or they say yield. They say return on assets as well. But return on assets is more ambiguous. People can say return on assets for cap on cost as well. And then cap on cost, to be completely honest, not many people use it. They use, the term is that cap on cost or yield on cost. And actually, just to explain it, maybe it'll make a bit clearer. So return, which is absolute return, it's yield plus growth, right? Yield, this is the cap rate, and then this would be the growth with it, which is what the professor was talking about, which is the capital gains that you get from a multi-period analysis, right? Appreciation, basically, or depreciation as well. You can have negative growth and it's depreciation. Charles.
So if we're asked to find the replacement cost rent, we're really just looking for the NOI on a per square foot basis from the cap on value.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I should note that NOI usually, at least in the US, it's expressed in yearly terms. This is rent per year. This that you have here, it's $17 per year per square foot. Right.
Just like referencing this back to the homework bill, wasn't the replacement cost like $23.50 or something?
Yeah, so this is the net replacement cost, which is actually the NOI, which is net operating income. Then you gotta add to that what's the vacancy and operating expenses, which was 1 and 5.5, which they add up to 6.5. 6.5 plus 17 is 23.50, which is the number you guys were working with.
And so when you're talking about replacement costs, it can either be delivered as net or gross.
Yeah.
I didn't want Charles to say that.
Okay, so if we're, this is what I'm understanding. If you're asked to calculate the replacement cost rent, you want to find the NOI on a per square foot basis from the cap on value rather than the cap on cost.
Anyways, I mean, because NOI is basically your income from rent, right? This can be on a per square foot basis. This can be like whole dollars, or for the sake of the example, let's use per square foot basis. But in module 2, we'll dive much into much more detail, and you'll guys understand why this is a net operating income, and what does the gross operating income account for. Matt?
So on that one, the NOI is $17 per square foot.
Yeah, NOI is 17,
Okay.
which is the net replacement rent.
Right. The way you've got written on here, that also equals cap on value, is that?
No, so the cap on value is 9, which is,
Right.
you could get the value, which is 17 divided by 9, and you
Right.
get 189.
Right, okay.
Say you have whole dollars.
Right.
You say your NOI is $1 million, then you divide that in, or 900,000. You divide that times 9, and then your rent would be $100,000 a year.
Okay, got it.
Is the NOI always equal to the net replacement cost? Always. Can I say
In
that?
this case, it is, and
Not
I
always.
guess on an ex ante perspective, it is usually. Otherwise, you wouldn't start a development. But it doesn't have to be like that on an ex post perspective. Looking back, you were supposed to have a 17% rent, and then the market crashed, and you ended up having 10. So your NOI, your actual NOI that you have, doesn't have to be the replacement rent. Understand? Okay.
I have a question. It's somewhat about human ag thing. There are numbers that are given by like markets and other objective things. What are the numbers that you know first, and then what are the numbers that you calculate out? Like I guess you know the cap rates first, and then you also know the cost. Imagine you're a developer, and then do you move on to NOI, and then you calculate present value? How do you get them like in a linear way?
So generally, cap rates are not like developers have it. So it's again they have to decide it according to the risk they want to take. So cap rates come from that sector, but NOI I would say in real world would come from like what are the market leases. Suppose you have a building, so what is the tenant actually paying you for that market space? Your NOI would be coming from that numbers. So you just simply add up all the money that is coming into the building plus all the maintenance money that is coming up. So X, Y, Z, all the income that a building generates, you get your NOI first from there. Then you would think about it, like then you remove all the expenses, whatever operating expenses you have, and then you come to cap.
For now, we're gonna, as I said, we're gonna delve a lot into this. For now, the idea is so you guys understand kind of the formulas behind it, not where the numbers are coming from. Like the 9% where it's coming from, you guys know that in the next modules. The 189, you guys know that as well. We're more like focused on the formulas right now.
Replacement cost, if you guys want to just do this on a side note, just remember as if like if you want to really at this point in time demolish, build a new building, what would it charge for you to replace the whole structure and the building? So think of it in those terms, If I'm gonna replacing this one as of today, what am I gonna get out of it? And then
Including the profit of the development.
so if you're an investor, you would always want to buy below replacement cost, right? You want to buy way below the replacement cost so that your profits are enhanced that way.
Anyone? No? Is this clear? You guys feel good about this? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I'm slightly more confused. So
Absolutely.
you're talking about replacement cost. Is it what it would cost to build a new structure, or is it what value the developer needs to then like initiate building?
No, replacement cost is what it would actually cost to build a new structure.
Including the profit
Including the
of the
profit.
developer.
Because if you're a developer and you just looked at this and you could build it and essentially build it for free and not make any profit, would you do it? Yeah, I wouldn't either. So that's what we're saying is basically a developer, there has to be profit in there to motivate somebody to take the risk to do the development. And that's really just the difference between these two. Is this is a metric to say, all right, if you took that 10% out and you projected your year one NOI for the development, and you put that right there, and you knew it was going to cost you $16.90 a square foot to build this thing, right? So you say your net income was $1,690 your first year. Well, that's going to be your 10%, or excuse me, $1.60. So it's going to be a 10% cap rate, which means if you capitalize that income at 10%, you're going to get the $1.69 a square foot. So your profit is then the difference between these two, because you're saying, hey, I can build this based on what the market's telling me. I can build this to a 10% cap rate. And the market is valuing this building with a tenant in it at a 9% cap rate. So it's inverted to the purchase price. So this is where you need to, it takes some serious thinking, is when the purchase price is higher, your cap rate is lower. It's inverted because it's off the same NOI. So what we're saying here is you can build it to a 10 cap, and then you can sell it to the market at a 9. So when you compress the cap rate down, it's the same NOI, your value of the asset goes up. It's in a nutshell. If it's not 100% clear, you'll flesh this out over the semester. Yes, sir.
So at that time, the NPV is about 0, right?
Correct. This would be a positive NPV development.
So it's always like that. When the replacement cost occurs, NPV always is bigger than 0.
Say that one more time. When a replacement cost occurs.
Yeah, I mean, when the cost equals the replacement cost, the NPV is actually positive. It's always like that.
No, it's always, in theory, at least to perfect capital markets, NPV zeros are the norm. That's what you get. Because in this yield right here, you're accounting for the profit already. 9%, you're already, it's 169 of cost plus 20 of profit. This is what you will pay for it, and this is what you will earn for it. This is, to buy the concrete, to buy the glass, to pay the workers. And this is when you sell it, you just get it. This is for you.
So Alfred, to the earlier question here, if the market was at a 10% cap rate and you could build to a 10, would you build it? If the market's saying based on your net income, we value this at a 10 cap, and the market said being a 9 was at a 10, would you build it? No. Why?
Because we don't make profit.
No profit. Exactly. Yes, sir.
So in that formula, replacement cost would be what?
I'm sorry? The formula for replacement cost?
Well, yes. I mean,
the replacement cost is the NOI.
Just look at this as a cost of development. All right, it's going to cost you X to build this building. And then once you move somebody in and you have a steady stream of cash flows, the market is saying it's worth 9%. We'll get a 9% yield on it, but you can build it to a 10. So anytime you can compress the yield, okay, or your cap rate. Am I losing you?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, you've got it.
It's just, I'm not clear about replacement.
About replacement cost? Replacement cost is essentially the cost it's going to take you to construct this building. So right now for this, just consider your replacement cost, your cost to build it, construction cost. Sir.
So in this scenario, you're essentially looking at it, I'm a developer, and if I want to develop and sell a property, because I can sell it at a profit, because the cap rate when I sell it is lower than the cap rate that I have. If I want to choose to build it to, correct. If I want to build them whole, I'm still making it 10% over time. Or do I have to run this cash flow out?
That's a different, that's your discounted cash flow.
This won't tell you right now whether if you wanna hold how much, that's the income return you're talking about.
Okay.
So this we are talking about like the appreciations and the cap rates and the values, not the,
Just build and not build. Okay. But if I'm an investor to buy a property, I'm only looking at cap on value.
Not the only thing you're gonna look at. This is one of the metrics that you would consider.
Well, if I'm not a builder, if I'm not a developer, I'm building, I'm only looking at cap on value. Looking to buy a property, I'm looking at cap.
Okay, if you were looking to buy a property and you only did it off the cap rate, you do so at your own peril. What we'll get into in the coming modules, and you'll see this, is basically the IRRs, the NPV. You're gonna wanna look at this on this kind of cash flow model over the next, typically it's 10 years. I think it's just because we had 10 fingers, so it was easy to read like today. But yeah, we'll dive into that. This is a good metric that just back of the envelope is what you'd call this. And just say, hey, does it pencil out? You could run a little, it's basically a setup. Does this make sense? And it could, and if you look at this and you're like, yeah, this makes sense. I buy it for, if you're buying this existing building at a 9% cap rate, but then next year you're gonna have to put all new roofs on it, your year 2 cap rate might be like a 7, which would be nowhere near market, which would hurt you. So I think we fleshed this one out pretty good. If you guys have more questions, we'll keep working through this in the coming weeks. Office hours obviously open on this one too. And just for kicks, we put a back of the envelope glossary. So if you're a little rusty on your terms with cap rates, economic occupancy, vacancy, all that sort of thing, that is under recitation notes. It's just BOE glossary. Help you out.
You said not the ones that you did. So land bit renter use. You guys remember this from the lecture? We had our monocentric, our city basically, and we had different uses. This graph right here is called the land Bitcoin curve. And basically what it does, it's a simple model that explains why do different types of uses cluster together, and why do the cities segregate in a certain way, right? So you have, say, for example, this use right here, which is use A, and they have this land gradient, which is pretty steep. For what reason exactly? It's steep. Sorry? Transportation costs, right? They are pretty sensible to transportation costs. Who's someone that's or what else? Transportation costs and what else?
Density.
Density. There you go. What would be a use? Density is probably even more important than transportation costs. What would be a use that would be close to A, for example?
Lawyers.
Or even more low-income or affordable housing. They gotta build. Yeah, they gotta build a lot of density. No? Well, you're probably a city planner, and you can.
Yeah, if you go to the financial district, my friend, you will not find many long-term housing projects.
All right. Then you got land gradient B, which is not as sensible to density and transportation costs. So basically, right in this point, this guy that's from A, let's say, his deciding between living here, right here, or right here, where would he decide? Close to the center, right? Why? Because this guy in B would be able to pay more for his land, right? And basically, when you put this together and you go, when you put this together, you get what it's called the Burgess model. You kind of can draw. You can draw a circle right here of each use, and then you have your monocentric city with the uses. This is use A, this is use B right here, and this is use C. Make sense? And that's what you get, a pretty simple model which explains a lot of stuff. An irony in this model, which is interesting to think about, is that actually rich people are the ones that pay less for land. Rich people usually live at point C, where they can actually, buy huge parcels of land and buy big houses. On a unit price, that land is actually cheaper than where poor people or lower income people live, because they have to dense up together and cluster together and live denser in denser areas. I'm not sure if it's A or B, Paul, but I'm sure they live closer to the center than the rich people. And that's just basically in one parcel of land, the rich people would say, I'm living alone here, right? And then if you don't have $10 million to pay for that, you gotta have 100 people to pay for that land, but then they're gonna beat up the price, and in terms of land, they're gonna pay more for that land.
This model also accounts for the sequential development of the city. So those internal units were built at the units close to the city center were built at a higher density to begin with, in most cases, and also are older and have gone through the sort of filtering process of whatever. So it's not explicitly just a land. I would actually not just land.
It's a strong generalization.
Yeah.
Right. Good, next. Wanna take this one? No, finish. Any questions on this, on this model? All right. So you're gonna take it, Mehul, or should I go?
You can go.
All right.
I can take it, but yeah. So irreversibility premium. No, open up this one. Yeah.
This one?
The first one, I think so. Okay. Whenever a developer actually wants to develop something new, right? So if you're on the edge, suppose if you're like over here, you have a parcel of land right at the edge, right? But you have the option value. You're not actually going to develop it like right now. You have the option. You can develop it right now. You can develop it 2 years down the line, right? So what does that give you? That option actually gives you two things, right? A, if there is an upswing in the market, you can actually take benefit of that upswing and use a parcel and time it perfectly and build your building at that point in time. Secondly, if you see like if a market has crashed like 08, right? You still have the option value of not building your parcel of land because you're not losing anything, right? You have the land, you're just still sitting on it. So you can either, get rid of the downside or really, make use of the upside. So this option value that you have is the irreversibility premium that you basically call on the land. It's the option value in simpler terms. I don't know, you want to add something on this?
I think Matt was the one who said it over the lecture. You could have the option to develop it right now, but then you could also wait and maybe develop it in a couple of years and, have higher rents or have higher density and all that just sums up to higher profits. So when is the right time to develop the land? That's definitely a good question to make yourself when you're a developer. And we'll see, in module 4, we'll get into that. And whoever takes next semester classes, they'll see it more in detail. But the idea is that once you decide to exercise that option and pay the development price, then you're basically
then you lose your option, right? Then
you lose your option,
you lose
at least
option.
for a good chunk of time, right? I mean, unless you're gonna just demolish the building next year and just build it again, well, no one does it, right? So you lose the option to use that land for a good chunk of time.
I have a question.
Yep.
Does it mean that if the market goes on well, then we'll wait for maybe the next year to build it? But when the market goes down, they will build it because in the next year the price will go even lower. So I think according to this equilibrium, the conclusion is not relevant to what is going on in reality, because in reality, when the market goes up, people usually build more houses.
Yeah, I agree, but let me put you an example. So the market's been going up just started going up. And you have a piece of land, but it's expected to go up for the next 5 years, and it's gonna go up really fast. Would you build right now, or would you wait a couple of years? Imagine you can build like right now instantaneously. You decide to build and it's built. Would you do it right now or wait another 3-4 years maybe and build it then and sell it higher? What would you do?
Maybe wait, unless I can have access to other lands.
Unless you can have access to a lot of land, but land.
So that I can build this one for this year, and if I can have another one, so I can build it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And land, there's a lot of land usually, but there's not a lot of land that can be developed. You cannot go and build an Empire State Building in a cornfield, because no one's gonna buy it. So usually the developable land, it's within the populated areas or cities. So it is usually scarce, and there's a lot of competition for the land.
So do you mean that the reason why is that if the market goes up, people build more houses, that the economy isn't going that fast? So it's not fast enough to let people hold on and wait for a couple of years and later.
I think if I can interject, I think what it means essentially is that there's a lag. People, even if the economy is doing well, because you can't undo buildings quickly and you want to maximize your profit when you build something, people will wait to maximize their profit even when the economy is doing well. So it's very easy if you have like a stock on the stock market to sell it right away for a higher profit. You can always buy it back and you can play around with the stock as it goes up and down. But once you choose to develop your land, you can't undo that. So people tend to be more cautious and want to maximize that investment, so they wait, essentially. And that's what this irreversibility rent is that the value of having that option wait or develop.
That's the option. Once you execute on that, you can't go back. Aaron, do you have a question?
That's why reversible.
More of a
Yeah, that's why it's irreversible.
Irreversible.
theory on policy. Does this kind of partly explain why the re-entry into the housing market, not only there was a glut of too many, but also that right now people are waiting for the values to go back up before they build on them? And then therefore, so that's why we're seeing a very slow re-entry into the development market.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's a supply demand balance you're trying to work out, right?
But you say like redevelopment, you mean?
Well, no, like, so there was too many houses, yes, I get that with supply and demand part, but then also, it's advantageous to me as a developer to not be the first one to enter the market. Because if I hold, and I hold that irreversible option to develop, then, you know, if he builds, now I can sell at a premium. So I don't want to be the last, but I don't want to be first.
There's a first mover component to some of that could be good too. It's the risk component.
But in general, you're thinking on the right track, I would say, because see, imagine someone built in 09, 010, like 10, 11, when the market was just picking up, and someone building right now when the market's really hot, right? So the guy who built in 2010, 11 lost his reversibility premium or whatever because he actually built it, right? It's irreversible now. The guy who held out until today has like the premium. He got like some premium from the rents and the growth, what happened between the last 2-3 years. So. Right now, for conceptual reasons, just think of it like as an option value. You're building it, it's irreversible, that's why the reversibility premium. Just think of it in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. Will we learn how to price this option value in this?
How to price the option value?
Yeah.
Well, that's not in this course. Yeah. That's for tools for analysis.
Tools for analysis next semester.
Next semester, and you can also take securitization with Walter Cars, and you'll get option theory. Just to, I think we've said it, but just to say it again, an option is the right without the obligation to do something. In this case, you have the right to develop, but not the obligation. So to answer your question again, if the market's going down, you don't have the obligation to develop. You can just wait it out and wait till the market bounces. And then when the market's going good, you also have you don't have the obligation. You have the right to do it, but you can also wait until the market gets better if you think it's gonna get better, and then commit irreversibly to it. Depreciate questions. Depreciation.
Yeah, I think Gilbert covered this pretty good today. Gave you a 30,000-foot view, dove in. We'll cover this more in class on Monday. Any questions yet on depreciation around what you heard today or in general? Assuming you guys can all read, good to go here.
Just to clarify, so the depreciation we're learning here is completely different from the accounting definition of depreciation, which kind of just takes into account the when.
Yes.
Yes.
GAAP principles, which
it's just a simplification in accounting.
Okay.
It's something assets depreciate over time. How do they depreciate? Exactly, no one knows. That's just accounting. This is like real depreciation.
And just to give you an overview, like what happens in general accounting, you do it a straight line, right? Whatever you have, you divide it, and that's for simplification reasons, right? But in general, what happens is what David was even telling today, and there's a lot of research out there in the market about it. The new building, right? It depreciates really faster in the first few years, and then kind of depreciation goes like this. So if you want to imagine or something like this, because see what happens is, as three things what can cause depreciation: physical, age, obsolescence. So every 5 years, suppose a new technology came. Now people like open floor plans. No one likes the corner offices anymore. People want that collaborative environment. So the designs which were made like 5-7 years back have depreciated drastically in the first 5-7 years itself. But then after at this point, what happens is your rents kind of get, then it's more about thinking, okay, I do not have the latest design, but still I'm getting at a cheaper rent. So then you would, give that option of like, oh, why not stay in the old building if I'm paying a little bit of a lesser rent? So this curve becomes more flatter over the time. So imagine like the first 5 to 10 years are the most critical when a building depreciates really, and then it kind of becomes a little more flatter.
Okay.
And then it becomes zero at one point in time.
Okay, and to decide what's the relevant timeline, would that be mostly related to the economic obsolescence? Is that a factor among those three that kind of is the main factor for deciding the timeline of this depreciation?
I think all three are very important because so physical would come in like say after some point. The first to hit would I would say would be the functional obsolescence. I don't know if you guys agree with that. I'd say functional obsolescence kicks in nowadays is really concerned age primarily like from like ages back age. Earlier people used to only correlate depreciation with the age of the building, and people never used to think that much about functional. But nowadays that has really become more important because buildings are becoming better. They're building really good quality buildings. The physical deterioration is happening a little bit later, but the functional obsolescence because of the new technology and new ideas is even happening more faster. That's my take on it. But
yeah, that's most seen. You'll see that a lot in industrial buildings. So the old roof height used to be at 18 feet, and now it's at 24. They're stacking higher, forklifts, that sort of thing. And so you'll see that would be an example of functional obsolescence. Then the physical component would be, it's not an exact science. So if you had a building that was in Miami on the coast versus a building that was in Omaha, the one in Miami, you have you have the salt water coming off the Atlantic and those sort of things in the sun. It's a little bit more intense weather-wise than what you might have in Omaha. So that building is probably going to physically deteriorate. So there's not an exact science to it. That's it.
And economic obsolescences would be, again, you have old warehouse in, the Soho district in New York, and all of a sudden these are becoming, loft and houses, and the warehouse became obsolete, and it just changed its use.
Infill redevelopment is a classic example. Like a lot of people have like really infill sites, industrial buildings. Over a point in time, the city expands, population grows. It's worthless to have industrial building anymore over there. What do? You scrape it off. You build like a new apartment complex over there. So that's like economically it makes sense to pull it down and make something new. So its highest and best use is no longer an industrial building. Now it's a multi-family building. Questions?
Like, when you're trying to cook up a function for depreciation, it's all well and good, but just as an aside, in reality, really, really good developers can figure out depreciation accurately and figure out if there's greater value to the asset than what's being priced at. And every house, every building, every structure is completely different, and so we'll find with really big development firms, sometimes they'll have a construction estimator on board that will be able to price out exactly what it costs to fit out in the building. Or you can look at a building sometimes and say, like one of my competitors in my last job was a company called Ace Hotels, and their bread and butter was taking absolute piece of crap buildings that no one wanted or would touch and turning them into basically 4-star hotels and taking the crappiness of the building, making it an asset. I mean, that's how they function. So just good developers can figure out, what a depreciation schedule is, figure out exactly what the cash flows and the likelihood will be going forward, given the characteristics of the asset. It's not an exact science. It's kind of an art.
Well said.
Thank you.
Any other questions about anything at all?
Yes,
I think
yes.
we've got a couple more slides up here that just for your benefit that we'll put up on Stellar. Then we'll just talk through cap rate. Charles.
And if you're open for any questions at all?
Yeah, any questions?
So in the homework for today, some of the suggested reading touched on enhanced cap rate on costs, profit margin ratio. He didn't touch on either of those in class. My understanding was that was another way that we could value whether or not these were good, whether or not Walden Woods was a good investment. Can you guys touch on that now, or should we save that for later?
Based on time, we probably save that.
Give you the
Based on our first, based on the first 30 minutes of class, we probably saved the answer. That's all. I guess in closing,
There is a file though that explains the enhanced cap rate on the cost of the seller.
Yeah. I mean, I played around up with it, but Portland is always good for all of these things.
We'll definitely, if we look at that next week, maybe we can explain it.
We can do it next,
Or even tomorrow.
in the office hours, we can do it if you want, just.
remember, post questions or anything that you guys might want us to cover in recitation, put it on the form. That way, a couple days in advance, that way we can make sure we have slides and everything ready to go. And if you are not fluid in Excel modeling, or don't have a good understanding of shortcuts and the formulas therein, make sure that you take some sort of online course or do some self-study or find somebody that knows what they're doing and have them teach you. That will put you light years ahead for the next module. So just trying to forewarn you guys. If you're rusty in Excel, tighten up on it.
Any conceptual things or Excel things, like, feel free to come in office hours. I'll be happy to, we'll be happy to sit with 4-5 guys and go over basic Excel stuff also if you guys are not really up to date with it.
So when you say fluent in Excel, how to use it or knowing all the functions and what they do? Because for the most part, I'm pretty good at physically operating Excel, but I don't necessarily know all the financial functions in it.
If I gave you a deal and said, create a 10-year discounted cash flow with this, and then give me the NPV, the IRR, and cap rate, could you do it?
I can figure it out a bit.
Okay.
I mean,
And
it would take me longer than it would need to. But.
We'll do a recitation on Excel as well, and actual functions. The ones you needed, they're not gonna be the
crazy. I can do it with my calculator.
Yeah.
Probably screwed up.
Even if you're good functionally with Excel, you'll be fine. The concepts you'll get in once we deep dive into module, you'll really understand how to do the financial part of it. But I think so right now, just be okay with using Excel. That should be good. It's good if you know how to do Excel.
Thank you guys. Thanks for the questions. Buddy Charles, if you want to grab a beer.